I've carried this story for 20 years, silently, until everything finally exploded last week. Growing up, I always thought love was something you had to earn, especially from your father. I'm the middle child. My younger brother, David, has always been my dad's pride and joy. David was the golden boy, the one who could do no wrong. Straight D student, Dad would proudly tell anyone he was a free spirit. Caught smoking behind school? Dad laughed and said boys will be boys. Meanwhile, I could get a 4.0 GPA, win a scholarship, come first in a national art competition, and Dad wouldn't even look up from the TV. If something went wrong, it was my fault. Lost remote? I hid it. Missing wallet? I must have stolen it. Broken garage door? Obviously me, even if I wasn't home that day. It wasn't just the emotional neglect. It was the cruelty. He used to call me cow, useless, good for nothing. Sometimes, when he was especially mad, he called me the accident. Once, when I was 9, I saved all my birthday money to buy a beautiful sketchbook. Drawing was my escape from everything. When Dad found it, he ripped it in half in front of me because he was mad I hadn't mowed the lawn. He laughed when I cried. David, he could burn down the house, and Dad would have blamed me for handing him the matches. My mom? She left when I was 6. I never really knew why. She just disappeared one day. I used to fantasize that maybe she left because Dad was so awful. Maybe she had no choice. But that hope got smaller every year. When I turned 18, I scraped together enough money for college. Dad refused to help with a single dime. He told me, "You'll never make anything of yourself anyway. Don't waste your time." I went anyway. I worked 2 jobs and lived off canned soup for a year, just to stay afloat. David, meanwhile, dropped out of high school and spent his days partying, funded entirely by Dad. I used to tell myself, it's not personal. Maybe he just connects more with David. Maybe it's a father-son thing. But that illusion shattered the night of my 20th birthday. I didn't expect much, just maybe a call, a text, some small acknowledgement. David got a full surprise party for his birthday, complete with a $3,000 dirt bike. For mine, silence. Around 11 p.m., I got a text from Dad. It said, "Don't forget the trash goes out tomorrow." I sat there, staring at it, while my tiny group of college friends tried awkwardly to sing me happy birthday around a store-bought cake. It hurt, but it was almost funny. I mean, how could I still expect anything different? Later that night, after a few drinks, I got reckless. I decided to confront him. I called him, and to my surprise, he picked up. I told him everything. The favoritism, the cruelty, how I never once felt loved or wanted, how much it broke me every single day. There was a pause, and then he laughed. A full, ugly, from-the-gut laugh. He said, "You're not even my real daughter anyway." I should have told you that a long time ago. At first, I thought he was drunk, or joking, but no. He kept talking. Apparently, when my mom was pregnant with me, she cheated on him. I wasn't his biological daughter. He said he knew from the moment he saw me. I didn't look like him, or act like family. He said raising me was a favor to my mother, but he never felt anything for me. I sat there in stunned silence as he ranted. It was like a dam had broken inside him. He told me how every time he looked at me, he thought of betrayal. How he wished she had taken me with her when she left. How he resented every penny he spent feeding and clothing me. I was shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. When I asked about Mom, where she was, why she left, he just snorted and hung up. I don't even remember the next few hours clearly. I think I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. I punched my pillow until my knuckles bled. I screamed into the empty room until my throat was raw. Stop. The pieces of my childhood started clicking together in horrifying ways. No wonder he beat me, but not David. No wonder he never cared if I was hurt or sick. No wonder he spent thousands on David and gave me nothing. I was a living, breathing reminder of the worst moment of his life, and he punished me for it every single day. But it didn't stop there. A week later, while spiraling deep into depression, I made a decision. If my mother was alive somewhere, I had to find her. I needed answers. I needed someone, to prove I wasn't completely worthless. What I found almost destroyed me all over again. What I discovered made every insult, every slap, every cold shoulder suddenly make a twisted kind of sense. It started with a box in the attic. After another argument with my dad over something ridiculous, this time I'd left a dish in the sink. I stormed out of the house. I didn't have anywhere to go, but I ended up at my grandmother's old house. She passed away 2 years ago, and it's been empty since. I don't know what drew me to the attic. Maybe I just needed to feel something familiar, something that didn't hate me. But up there, in a dusty, rotting chest, I found the letters. Dozens of them, all addressed to my mother. And none of them were from my father. The handwriting was elegant, neat, and filled with affection. One of the earliest letters read, "I know your husband doesn't treat you right, but if you're still carrying my child, please name her after the moon so I know she's mine." I dropped the letter. My breath caught in my throat. My name? My name literally means moonlight. My dad didn't name me. He always said it was some sentimental crap my mother came up with. My knees gave out. I sat on the attic floor for hours, just reading through the rest. I was never his. That explains everything. The beatings, the hatred, the cold indifference. The way he'd call me names like goat and pig while spoiling my brother. My brother was his son. I was someone else's mistake. But that wasn't even the worst part. There was one letter from my mother, never sent. He suspects she's not his. I'm scared. He hit me last night. If anything happens to me, please tell her the truth. Let her know she was loved. Please. I crumpled the letter in my hands. My mom didn't die in an accident like they always told me. No one ever talked about how she died, just that it was early and tragic. But now I think, no, I know my father had something to do with it. That's why he never talked about her. That's why no photos of her remain in the house. And that's why he always looked at me like I was the ghost of a betrayal he couldn't forgive. I confronted him. I stood in the doorway holding the letter. "Who was he?" I asked. He just looked at me. His face didn't change. "I found the letters," I said. "I know I'm not yours. I know what you did to her." His face twitched. For a second, I saw fear. Then he sneered. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're just like your whore of a mother." I slapped him. I don't regret it. He didn't hit me back, but he laughed. That slow, evil laugh. "Good. Get angry. Run off. You'll end up just like her. Alone. Crying in the dark." I left, and I'm never going back. But the story doesn't end here, because I tracked down the return address on one of the letters. The man who wrote to my mom, my real father, he's alive, and I'm going to find him. I discovered my so-called dad isn't my biological father. I was hated my entire life because of a secret my mother took to her grave. A secret I uncovered in letters hidden in my grandmother's attic. Now I know the truth. I am the child of an affair. My real father, a man my mother loved but could never be with. A man whose name was on those letters she kept but never mailed. And this weekend, I met him, but nothing could have prepared me for what I learned next. I tracked him down. Let's call him Daniel. The address on one of the older envelopes was somewhere in a small rural town just 3 hours from where I live now. With nothing left to lose and no one I could call family, I went. When I got to his house, a quiet place with peeling paint and a crooked mailbox, I froze. I stood outside his gate for maybe 30 minutes, wondering what the hell I was even doing. Then I knocked. He opened the door, older and grayer than I imagined. But those eyes, something in them looked familiar, something gentle. The opposite of the man who raised me. I told him who I was. He didn't deny it. He didn't even hesitate. He started crying. And for the first time in my entire life, someone cried because they were happy to see me. We talked for hours. He told me about my mother, how they met at work, how she was in a terrible marriage, but couldn't leave because she was scared, how he begged her to run away with him. But she always said, if I leave, he'll take my kids and ruin their lives. That part gutted me, because he did. Daniel told me he suspected I was his, but after my mother stopped responding to letters, he thought maybe she had a change of heart. He thought maybe she chose her marriage over him. I told him what happened to her. He broke down completely. But then the tone shifted, because I asked him the one question I hadn't had the courage to say out loud. Why didn't you fight for me? He hesitated. Then he said, because I wasn't allowed to. The truth was buried deeper. He showed me something, a letter from my mother's family, a letter threatening him. Apparently, my grandfather found out about the affair and warned Daniel to stay away, unless he wanted the world to find out what he did. I didn't understand. What did you do? I asked, his face turned to stone. He wouldn't answer at first. Then he said it. I didn't just fall in love with your mother. I was her high school teacher. My stomach dropped. He was 32. She was 17. She dropped out shortly after getting sick, which I now know was her pregnancy with me. Her parents forced her to marry the man who would become my legal father, the man who abused and tortured both of us for decades. I felt like the floor beneath me had cracked wide open. I wasn't just the product of an affair. I was the product of something inappropriate, taboo, hidden for good reason, something that tore apart multiple lives. And my grandparents knew. That's why they disowned my mother when she died. That's why my father hated me with a burning fury. That's why I was never allowed to ask questions. I was a walking, talking reminder of a story everyone wanted buried. I don't know how to feel. Daniel, my real father, he's not a monster. I can feel that. But he was a grown man in a position of power over a teenage girl, my mother. Did she love him? I believe she did. Was it still wrong? I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. What I do know is that no one ever protected me. Not my dad, not my grandparents, not even my brother, who watched me suffer and laughed along. Now I'm alone, with a man who might be my father, who wants to make up for lost time. But at what cost? And there's more, because right before I left, Daniel said, "You're not the only child." Wait, what? Apparently my mother wasn't the only woman he had a relationship with while he was teaching. There may be others, other siblings, other secrets, other girls like me, born in the shadows of shame and lies. What the hell do I do with that? How do I process this? Should I try to find them? Should I even try to forgive any of these people? Is this trauma ever going to stop expanding like a bottomless pit? For the first time in my life, I know who I am, but it feels like knowing that is only making everything worse. I think I need to find these other kids. Maybe one of them has the missing pieces I don't. Maybe we can help each other heal. My life has been a storm of trauma, neglect, and betrayal. My dad never loved me because I wasn't his. My mother died keeping a devastating secret, that I'm the result of an affair with her much older high school teacher. And now that I've found my biological father, Daniel, I've uncovered even darker truths. In my last post, Daniel revealed I wasn't his only child. There were others, and now I've found one. Her name is Natalie, and she's my half-sister. But her story? Her story is darker than mine. I found Natalie by accident. After Daniel told me there were others, I started digging. He refused to give me names, said he wasn't sure and that it wasn't his place. So I took matters into my own hands. through some sketchy but effective intranet sleuthing. Thank you, Reddit, for your advice. I searched forums, old alumni groups, and local Facebook pages connected to Daniel's past. One name came up again and again: Natalie Monroe, a woman who had been outspoken about being groomed by a teacher in her teens. A woman who'd vanished from social media 5 years ago. A woman who once claimed she had a child but never revealed the father. I messaged her. No response. I waited 2 weeks, sent a second message, this time more detailed, including who I was, what I'd learned, and that I believed we were connected through Daniel. Then she replied. Her first message? 1 sentence. If you're Daniel's daughter, I'm so sorry. We arranged a video call. The moment I saw her face, I knew. She looked like me. Same nose, same deep-set eyes, same tired expression, like life had drained the light out too soon. She told me everything. Natalie was 15. Daniel was her biology teacher. He started mentoring her after school, praising her intelligence, buying her books. He helped her get into summer science programs, then took her on out-of-town college visits. That's when it started. She thought she was in love. He told her she was different, that she was mature for her age. She got pregnant at 16. He vanished before the baby was born. Natalie's parents forced her to give the child up for adoption. She spiraled, dropped out, got involved with abusive partners. Her life derailed for decades. And Daniel? He moved towns and kept teaching. Here's where it gets worse. She confronted him 5 years ago. She had evidence, old letters, gifts, even photos. She threatened to go public. The next day, she received a cease and desist from his lawyer. He told her she was unstable and delusional, and that pursuing anything would result in legal retaliation for defamation. She didn't have the money to fight. She didn't have the strength, so she disappeared. And then she said something that shook me to my core. You're not his only child, and neither am I. I know of at least 4 others. 2 of them were never born. I couldn't speak. Natalie had spoken with another woman years ago, an old friend from school who got pregnant and had an abortion at 14. Her diary later mentioned Mr. B as the father. Daniel has a pattern. He targets vulnerable girls, teenagers, always students, always in crisis. Then he vanishes when things get complicated. What does that make me? My mother was 17. She was scared, alone, forced into a marriage to hide a scandal. Every day, in every insult, every slap, every ignored birthday. And you were a mistake. Because my dad knew, and he hated me for it. And now I have a sister who is broken in all the same places. And more sisters and maybe brothers out there. Kids like me, born from this man who walks around unpunished, untouched, unbothered. I want justice, but what does that even mean? I want to expose him. I want the world to know what he did, what he still might be doing. But I also want peace. I want to stop waking up with a tight chest and wondering why I wasn't enough. Why I wasn't loved. Why I got the bruises while my brother got gifts. Natalie said something I can't stop thinking about. We can't change what he did, but we can stop him from doing it again. I don't know what our next move is. Legal action? Public exposure? A podcast? A documentary? All I know is that for the first time in my life, I'm not alone. And maybe that's where healing starts.